Hey everybody, welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Barryte, and as always, I am joined by the lovely Katie Reed.
What up?
And we have a special guest on our show. It is Scorpion's very own Ari Stidham.
Very happy to be here, folks. I would have written a poem, but I didn't have enough time.
It's totally fine. If you're unfamiliar with Ari, he plays Sylvester on the CBS show Scorpion.
That I do.
You also have a ton of music posted all about the internet, specifically under Dr. TV,
Yes,
correct?
Dr. TV or DRTV for the kids at home.
And he's also a longtime friend of mine.
I love you.
Yeah, we did improv together for ages, and I actually was like his junior camp counselor when I first met him.
Very true. We go back a long time.
This is true.
Yeah.
So we're very glad to have you on.
I'm so happy to be here.
Although you are admittedly a little miffed because at the start of this, we require our guests to take the Pottermore quiz so we know where they more or less stand.
I should have lied.
And it is worth noting, I am a Ravenclaw. Katie is a Hufflepuff.
Yep.
And
in the wool.
And Ari, very you're not happy about this.
Look, when I came in here, I should have said, guys, I took it years ago, and I'm a Ravenclaw. I know I'm a Ravenclaw through and through. I know my traits. I look at myself in the mirror, and I say I'm a Ravenclaw. But damn it, if it's not like what eHarmony or Ancestry.com, not eHarmony, I'm sorry. What Ancestry.com, it's a different rant. Sorry, I got to program the other rant. Ancestry.com, what they've taught us is maybe you think you're Polish your whole life, and then you just swab your mouth, send it to them, and all of a sudden you find out you're not Polish. You are from Africa. And I'm from Hufflepuff. I'm not a Ravenclaw. That's what happened today. Some Ancestry.com hog shit happened to me today. So, am I allowed to say hog shit on this Hogwarts podcast?
Yep.
I feel like more than any other house in Harry Potter, when people take this quiz and get Hufflepuff, they are devastated. It's something they have to come to terms with.
I bet it's the same. You're going to be Ravenclaw, but that last question, black or white, if you choose black, it's Ravenclaw. If you choose white, it's Hufflepuff. I don't think they put a lot of thought. I don't think do they put a lot of thought into it?
I think they do,
I don't
actually.
want to, okay, look, listen, coders, if you're out there coding the Pottermore quiz, just change mine, okay? Put me back to Ravenclaw where I thought I was, because Hufflepuff, I'm looking at myself. Was Cedric Diggory a Hufflepuff?
He was.
All right. I'm feeling a little bit better about it. Yeah.
Arguably Hogwarts' greatest athlete and like one of their nicest people was a Hufflepuff. A lot of people assume he's a Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
For some reason.
He's not. It's also,
I'm feeling better about it.
It's also worth noting, previous guest, Ryan Finnerty was very upset upon being put in the House of Slytherin.
For 1 second, and then he realized that he could just get away with being, like, tricky.
Which is, in it of itself, a very Slytherin trait.
I think when you hold yourself accountable for your actions, the way that most human beings do, as Ryan does, when somebody says, you're a Slytherin, you know they're right. You know, if you are a Slytherin, you know they're right, but you just got to play it a little bit. I'm not saying Ryan's a bad guy. I love Ryan, but
it is a very
you sort of got to be like, oh no, Slytherin,
it is a very interesting thing that I mean, you really just have to take ownership of what you are. Like, but right now, we've sort of dilly-dallied actually around the subject at hand.
Yeah,
which,
well, I'm a Ravenclaw is me accepting and I'm a Ravenclaw.
That's not it. But
okay.
So the point of this podcast, one of these days we'll like really figure out how to do the introduction.
One day it will work.
One day. The point of the podcast is we are going to be acting as a communal sorting hat. Okay. And the subjects discussed are not people in any real capacity, but are items, things in the known and unknown universe, which we are then going to be sorting into the Hogwarts houses. So the topic at hand today is Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals.
Introduction over. I helped you out there a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the musicals at hand, we're going to be doing 5. They're going to be Oklahoma, The King and I, Cinderella, South Pacific, and The Sound of Music. So if either of you happen to have an immediate snap judgment on any of those musicals and which house they belong in, speak now.
Okay.
I think innately musicals are Hufflepuff just because you celebrate a lot of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm dulling that sense moving forward because, and I'm just saying,
Right.
sort of being racist towards musicals. They're all Hufflepuff.
Well,
me.
there is something about, Hufflepuff is inherently artistic.
Yeah.
And so that naturally, your Andy Warhol's, your Bob Ross's, you'd instinctively be like, oh, they go in that category. But then you've also got folks like Jane Goodall who meet the trope because they're also very naturey. But
one thing to consider, though, folks, is Rodgers and Hammerstein were really in the group of musical composers that while they wanted to make great works of art and were masters of their craft, they, as much as any other form of entertainment at that time, chased trends very hard and were very politically competitive and aggressive, especially in changing down intellectual properties to adapt into musicals. So there's a lot more of a Slytherin side to musical theater than a lot of people, especially at the time. It was the only way that popular media was really consumed was in the Broadway show or in the vaudeville show. Because they were getting into radio and and films, but they definitely didn't come up in that generation. They were at the tail end of that.
In that regard, though, you're painting. So we've kind of spoken in a general sense of both musicals in general being Hufflepuffs, and then Rodgers and Hammerstein in some way having a cloud of Slytherin over them.
I see what you're saying. It is an equation. I learned from my work on Scorpion how to do these equations. Hufflepuff plus 2 Slytherins equals a Hufflepuff. Thank you very much. I'm going home.
It's not that simple. It's
Okay,
not
never
that
mind.
simple. So let's simply go to Oklahoma. Perhaps it's probably between that and The Sound of Music being their biggest
Yeah, the popular ones.
musical theater accomplishments, contributions, moving and shaking and all that nonsense.
They've got so many, but those are the middle schoolers would know those.
Right. So just to start with Oklahoma, for those unfamiliar, the very, very simple rundown plot wise, and either of you can jump in. Curly and Lori, 2 lovely individuals in the state of Oklahoma. They're bound to be married, but then that old never lover but begrudged individual Judd Fry decides to get revenge on Curly and things go south. And,
I just love hearing you break down what a musical is.
And
the plot of a
I'm trying to give the
musical.
plot but
it's
as
beautiful.
bare
You're doing
bones as
great.
possible. And then there's a weird mechanism where he's I'm gonna blind Curly because of some carnival salesman. And then there's Annie Oakley, who
Ao Annie.
I'm sorry.
Ao Annie.
I'm mixing my musicals.
You can't catch a man with a gun.
That's Irving Berlin.
Yeah. Ao Annie.
Ado
Annie. Forgive me. Sure. Who just can't say no.
No.
Really kind of a very progressive, forward woman as far as the time goes.
Sure.
I got no judgments as to the type of person that character is, because a character could be
Right,
portrayed
yeah.
a million different ways. Starting to chew the mic now.
It's
So
totally
maybe-
fine.
Yeah. But I'd agree. I don't think anybody had seen a character like that who wasn't.
It was 1943.
Yeah.
This musical debuted.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, it's got a bunch of like very strange components to it. Like Curly going in and giving a dirge to Judd Fry about his own funeral, like just sort of lording it over him. And there are several characters who are making very brash actions like that, which lend me to actually put this into a Gryffindor camp. Because Gryffindors are noble in intent, but often pretty rambunctious as far as consequences go. So you've got like many of the characters and just like the theming of it such that it feels a little bit reckless in its overall sort of, I don't know, execution in some regards. But
overall, from like a compositional point of view, it was one of the first book musicals, which means it was integrating its musical numbers and especially like its dance and design aspects like into the story. That wasn't necessarily done as much before that. I think like Showboat did it in like the first like very established way, but this was another one where people were like, oh, these aren't just songs I already know when I'm going to see the theater, and using things like the Dream Ballet. It was all very innovative.
Oh, I forgot all about the Dream Ballet.
For these reasons, I feel like
Carousel's got one of those too.
Yeah, it was very forward thinking, very avant-garde, and like you said, in terms of women's roles, very progressive. And for that reason, for it being on one hand super melodramatic and but in other ways very brave, just in terms of like we're taking a risk with and hoping the audience will follow along with this, I would put it in a Gryffindor stance for those reasons.
Okay,
like,
yeah. So you're
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But just for very specific, like,
yeah, I wasn't even thinking as far as the like outer constructs of like the musical. But no, that's very valid. Ari, do you agree? Disagree? You're welcome to either.
I just don't see a lot of valor in the Curly character. I don't see a lot of heroism in any of the characters. I feel like everything's sort of settled simply or in a brutish way.
Yeah.
Which I feel is below Gryffindor. I don't think a Gryffindor would result, in violence or in the push or pull of fucking around with your elders. I mean, Curly just like spits in the elder's face, really. It does not respect the old people in the town. So I don't know. It seems like the lessons that this musical teaches, if you're sort of looking at a wizard see, wizard do sort of world, I'd still say Hufflepuff, just because you shouldn't take it seriously. It doesn't have really anything negative in it, but if you were to take it seriously for its lessons or for the moral of the thing, I mean, I don't see it being morally sound. I see it being like a piece of content that people really dug back in the day, So
no, and I would especially agree with you. This musical is not aged well.
No.
Like watching
No.
now, if you are not a dork for musical theater in the first place, it's not probably something that you're going to sit down and go, I relate to this.
It's not even like soap opera campy. It's like there's just some shit that doesn't make sense in there. It's just bad sometimes. And that's fine. I mean, look, that's fine because it's Oklahoma. Like people go to see Oklahoma because they're like, oh, it's Oklahoma, but
No, that's all.
It's a lot of these musicals are 3-4 hours if you do them
Right.
and it's hard to sit through sometimes.
That's all both valid points. I'm going to say we move on. We don't necessarily need to definitively land on like it's in one house or the other.
No, I want to have a fist fight. I want to have a full-on fist fight with somebody about it.
Like you have no idea how much I want to be in a fist fight, especially over Harry Potter. It would be great.
I'm really
Or
looking
Oklahoma.
forward to the two of you going out behind the building after this recording is done, and Ari just like
What? Why do you automatically assume that Ari would win?
I'm just going to give Ari the slight height advantage.
Only height.
Only height.
There's
That's
only
it.
one thing differing between the two of us, and it is height.
That's it. Moving on, however, I then say we jump into South Pacific,
Sure.
which is a musical that I've only seen once, so I implore either Katie or Ari to take the helm as far as plot construction goes.
Okay. I'm also gonna put this one into Gryffindor.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us just a plot summary so I'm brought back up to speed roughly?
Oh, sure. This was introduced like directly after World War II. I think it takes place during World War II
does.
in the South on an island in the South Pacific.
How very aptly named.
And
adjacent to Bali High.
And the A plot follows the guy who's marrying the woman from the island, right?
The A plot follows the woman.
The woman, okay.
I wish I remembered the character's name because it's so iconic. But
I'm happy to pull it up.
like I saw Reba play it. I saw Reba play it, and I saw.
Is she the one who's going to wash that man out of her hair?
She is the one who's going to wash that man right out of her hair. Basically. So she works with the military as a nurse, and she's caught up in this romance with a very wealthy man on the island who's got these two little French-speaking, Polynesian kids, but he's a widower. And he's in love with her. She's helping him raise the kids, and they love her.
Nellie? Is that her name?
Yes, Nellie. Yeah. Nellie, what is her last name? Nellie Forsyth? No. Forsyth. Why Forsyth, Ari? No. It's Nellie. Nellie. This is so bad that I didn't look this up. And I was like, I insisted on South Pacific. Before we rolled, I said, South Pacific is the one. And I'm like, no, because I remember.
Oh, you were close. Nellie Forbush.
Forbush. I was right. Forbush.
Okay, so Nellie Forbush.
So Nellie Forbush and Emil, I believe is the guy's name. They got a little thing going on, and then she's going to work with these sailors who are in the South Pacific. One of them is named Luther Billis. He's sort of like the fun sailor guy, and it's tales from the South Pacific. It's like little stories that happen in these places, and there's a new lieutenant who gets brought to their camp, and then he goes on some mission, and they talk to this like local witch doctor lady named Bloody Mary, and she's telling them about this beautiful island, Bali High, and she introduces the guy to her daughter, and like they fall in love, and he sings like Younger Than Springtime. Oh, it's so beautiful. I mean, look, I would put this musical. There's a lot of stuff that happens. That cat, the guy who's making out with Bloody Mary's daughter, and he dies. He gets, because it's spoiler alert, whatever.
Spoiler alert. This came out in like 1947.
And Nellie Forbush ends up with the homie, but the Emil guy, and Luther Billis is still trying to trying to get it in with anything that he can, because he's all the sailors are so, this is what I gotta say about this. All the sailors are so incredibly woman starved, but they're on an island that has women, and they're talking about there's nothing like a dame, nothing in the world. But there's nurses there, and there's girls around. So it's just these sailors are just horny as hell, and they can't take it anymore. So I give this musical a C, and I put it in Hufflepuff.
Wow.
Because once again, you're not supposed to take it seriously. It depicts these guys as pigs, like fun-loving pigs.
I again take some of the points that you've said and find those very much leaning more towards either Gryffindor or Slytherin for those very reasons, because they're very passion and heated as far as their drive goes, as far as motivations are concerned. I do think, sorry to sidebar, some of that fluff, I suppose, as far that you're ascribing to Hufflepuff is more prevalent in some of the later ones that we're going to be touching on. But I mean, there obviously is a romanticized version of...
You're romanticizing wartime.
Which, was very popular at the time. Like the war effort was on everyone's mind,
especially as the winning side.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's more Hufflepuffy than Gryffindory.
Now, one argument against that in this show is the lieutenant's song, "You've Got to Be Carefully Taught." I don't think that is necessarily something that even the most ambitious Hufflepuff would want to get into, because for the, historically framed, a lot of people were like, fuck South Pacific, this is too inappropriate for the theater for them to be telling the white audiences, oh, by the way, racism exists because you're teaching it to your children.
Yeah, that's true, because they did have a multicultural romance. Mm-hmm. And so that was of issue for some people.
Oh, yeah. Seeing an interracial couple on stage was unheard of. Like, it was not the most easily received.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I'm saying Hufflepuff. Because it was still received.
I'm actually now thinking, sorry to cut you off, that based on just what you said, and I'm not sure if this is where you were tracking things to, mm-hmm. Are you sort of viewing this as something that had a more subversive message that was meant to be teaching and instructing societally, which would kind of put it more in a Ravenclaw camp?
Potentially. It's a pretty preachy song. Looking at anything, it uses the word you. Mm-hmm. You've got to be carefully taught, saying to these white middle class audiences in New York.
In the framing of the song, it's to the soldiers, but it's like, oh, but beyond you.
It's saying to these middle class white people in the Broadway theaters, you're no better than the South. You're no better than the Germans. We're talking to you right mm-hmm. now, and we're telling you racism exists because you were taught it, and it's going to continue to be a problem because you are making the choice to teach it to your children.
I mean, I honestly, I think that we're implying that that's what the song is saying. I think that the song says that and more. I think that it says far more than just these people in the audience are doing this thing. I think it's just talking about racism since the dawn of time. It's like truly how it's been. Oh, no, definitely.
But I think the fact that the conversation was brought up at all was not, people were not used to that, to being confronted with the idea, of racism, not be like the idea of races being equal.
And it's also very peculiar / interesting that this would come so closely after the war, where we definitely had very excessive and just outright racist propaganda demonizing the East, demonizing anybody within the axis of evil, or the Axis powers, not the mm-hmm. axis of evil. That's a different thing. So, I mean, yeah, we're again at this weird sort of, there's a lot to unbox in South Pacific, which is incredibly strange considering it at least has that more fun vibe about it.
Until it doesn't.
Again, this is me not remembering how, I am only remembering the first act of this, really.
Second act, shit hits the fan, dude.
Noted.
People die.
I guess I need to watch South Pacific again.
Alec Baldwin plays Luther Billis with Reba. It was very good.
That sounds like such a strange adaptation.
It was very good. I loved
it. Do you want to shift on?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Going to something that I think is an undisputed Hufflepuff is probably Cinderella.
Oh.
But you're talking about Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella with Prince Topher, right? We're talking about...
Is that the character's name? Prince Topher?
Yeah. Am I crazy? The one that just got redone for Douglas Carter Bean a couple years back?
That's information that I'm unaware of.
Okay.
You're more in this hole than I am.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons why the subject is being...
Prince Topher.
There we go.
In some adaptations.
Understood.
So I just want to say, in this one...
Yes.
There's a great B plot for the prince, mm-hmm. that in which he's learning how to rule a kingdom, mm-hmm. and he is making decisions for the first time as a man, and Cinderella is inspiring him to learn more about what's actually going on because she's providing a voice for the voiceless. And there's also like a Perchik from Fiddler on the Roof style character in the musical. I think this musical is a Ravenclaw musical.
Really?
I do. Only because Cinderella's stepsisters and all of their songs are the best songs of the show. Like the jokes about like I forget what it's called, but there's one about like doing it for the man or something, and it's just like resentment for trying to put on airs, but it's so specific, and the way they pull it off is like very meticulous. And I feel like you don't see a lot of Gryffindor sort of like howling at the moon, going like this. I wish things were a little bit different. Whereas like Ravenclaws, they can get frustrated, they can get hung up on shit.
Yeah, no, that's. I mean,
I think there's a lot of that in this musical.
Ravenclaws are definitely people who like, or they strive for structure.
Yeah,
and when things don't go, presumably like how they want, they're like adjusting the tower to like make sure it doesn't fall over.
Yeah, and so just visually, the stepsisters trying the shoe on, cutting the feet off, doing all that stuff. That's sort of a visual representation.
I would
of what you just
also say that I would put this as a Ravenclaw musical. It was, I think, their only one that they wrote to be broadcast on television, that it was written to be seen on TV, which in its own way was super innovative. And so it has like the pacing that moves along a lot more than what you would get with a stage musical.
I do recall most scenes being fairly short. And there is like, while I wouldn't cite every single song as super memorable, like they are pretty light and like,
yeah, the melodies dance with each other too for the duet with the prince and her. It's great.
It's interesting because I definitely was in this musical as like a child.
Oh, really?
I was. I think I played the king. Which like is not a wildly exotic part in this particular variant, but fun costumes. I can definitely say that. I suppose I can concede that Ravenclaw, although I do think that they're, I mean, Put
your dukes up, Barryte.
What?
Put your dukes up.
I mean, I'm also acting as something of an enabler just to get you off of a certain path every now and
honestly,
again.
I can see your argument for it, though, also because out of a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein's collected works, it's one that people can identify with the most easily. Like there's not really a lot of like plot exposition that they don't already know. So it is a familiar, like more like homey and comfy sort of adaptation of the story in a way that like does suggest Hufflepuff pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, all musicals suggest Hufflepuff. Citing my very first argument.
Right. Okay, so we've dealt Oklahoma.
He's flipping me off with both hands.
I'm not. That's not actually what's happening.
Oh, and then can I say, though, also, I'd have to put it firmly in Ravenclaw because I think Whitney Houston would be a Ravenclaw, and the Whitney Houston Brandy adaptation is the best of all of the adaptations of that. It is an amazing, if you have not seen it, you need to.
You gotta check it out.
I really want to hear just your breakdown on Whitney Houston as a Ravenclaw, truth be told.
We'll save it.
Okay. Pocketing that. Okay, so we've dealt Oklahoma. We've dealt... The King and I. The King and I is next on the docket.
Man. Do we do a plot breakdown of The King and I?
I mean, it's worth doing because we've done that already.
Anna Leon Owens with her 2 children goes to Siam to help the king of Siam and teach all of his children how to speak English. And there she befriends the king of... Am I right? Am I doing okay?
Yeah, and like essentially teach these people how to be courtly in the Western colonized fashion.
It's like she's like a one-woman cotillion for an entire culture.
Was this before or after South Pacific? Just out of curiosity, do we know?
This came after, didn't it? I'm going to fact check this right now.
It doesn't continue on plot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, basically, she shows up and everybody's stuck doing things their own way in Siam. And she's like, well, that's not the way that you do it in the world. And they're like, we're not going to let a woman tell us how to do it. And like, there's a lot of that in it. More so than any of the, I think more so than any of the other plays.
Yeah.
And gosh, the Kralahom's there, who's the king's sidekick. I know that because I played the Kralahome. Sir Edward James Ramsay. This is what I wanted. I wrote this down because I wanted to make a point about this character. I don't know if he was a real life person, but he shows up at the end of the show. They talk about him briefly. He comes to Siam and he's friends with Anna Leon Owens. They're there and she's talking about how she's like very homesick for England. And there's this whole ball where basically before Shall We Dance happens, they're like talking to each other. Or maybe it's after Shall We Dance. What the fuck ever. Anyway, this dude is on stage for 5 minutes, proposes to Anna Leon Owens at the end of his scene. Goes like, you know what? If you'll have me, like, let's go. She's like, no. I want to stay in Siam.
Do you think
I'm not going to get married to you?
Do you think that was just Rodgers and Hammerstein being like, we don't really have like much of a conflict for her? Like,
there isn't. The kids become friends, right? There's like a whole scene between
because like
the young prince and then Louis.
If I recall correctly, the only real friction is between her and the king.
Yeah.
And that dissolves fairly quickly. Like, by the time you're entering, like, Act 2, like, they're okay with one another, if I recall correctly.
No, because there is, like, the entire conflict just becomes an internal one of, like, their attraction to each other and not being able to talk about it.
Right. Which is, again, a very interesting, if we're going to track this one in like what house it would be in, at least at the start of this musical, I believe it is Slytherin. Like, because it is Western culture coming in to like civilize the East. Like,
and like, and like very much playing into the fetishism of the exotic Orient that like at the time was very culturally in vogue, like post. Oh, this was 51. This was after South Pacific, by the way.
That's interesting. But like as we work through it, it's like, oh no, wait, like there's like a turn on this because again, we get into a multiracial relationship that does make it a much more progressive piece, which is very weird because definitely going into this conversation, I did not think of Rodgers and Hammerstein as like the most progressive,
very progressive
people.
Only because we look at musicals now,
right?
Like your point at the top of this was spot on. That was the medium.
Yeah,
it's like you're not going to look at a John Oliver piece online back then. You're going to look at
being as good of businessmen as they were like artists. They understood that if you wanted to introduce topics to a larger audience, you had to do it with fluffier intros. You had to do it with things that they would go in thinking, oh, this is familiar to me. This is going to be fun and light.
So do you think at the end of The King and I, we're at Ravenclaw? Or are we at Gryffindor?
I think I second you. It's a Slytherin piece.
Yeah. And like, honestly, out of all of their musicals, like the music is good, but it's the one that makes me cringe the hardest.
Is that from a musical standpoint, a lyrical standpoint?
Oh no, just the fact that they cast white people as Asian characters.
Yeah, I mean,
they also reappropriate Uncle Tom's Cabin to Siamese culture, and they misuse Buddhism.
Yes,
right. Within the play.
Like, is the end result as noble as I'm recalling it is? Or
No.
It's a character-driven gigantic spectacle.
Oh, at the end he just is like, he does.
It is. Yeah, it's very much
family, and they never kissed or nothing.
It's very much in the tradition of melodrama and like the king's hubris.
Right. And it's like if only he had accepted Western culture, like things might have been better for him and his family. Like that's sort of the weird, like not quite takeaway.
I hate that I don't know this. I feel very ignorant. But was this before or after the fall of Siam that the musical happened?
I also don't know.
Because that would also really.
Yeah.
Because I
we
think
did not
I
do
think
our research.
I think this
Ooh, keeps hitting the mic.
the actual
His face.
things. This took place in the 1850s, 1860s, historically.
Yeah.
So this is like a period drama at the time that it debuted.
Oh yeah, and there was a book that was famous, right? It was like there's source material for all of these musicals. There's source material.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't know where, geographically, what the political climate would have been in that area. Like where I have no idea. And honestly, like I could be ignorant. Please blow up my my notifications if I am wrong. It just really seemed like we had gotten out of World War II, and like people were coming home from Asia, having like been introduced to some of the culture and like just being fascinated by it.
Right.
And I feel like it might have been just a part to be like, here you go. Here's more Asian culture, because we know this is what people are like have on their brains right now.
Right. Yeah, that definitely is. It is a more. I don't want to use the word insidious, because that it again paints Slytherins in a poor light.
No, opportunistic.
Opportunistic. It's a little more crafty in nature and the construct of or presumable purpose of the musicals.
For the same reason that we base a lot of TV dramas in the Middle East or have them to do with like domestic and international terrorism.
Right. Or the type of abuse you're not really supposed to talk about. And It shows all about that.
Yeah.
People who've been abused that way. And
Yeah.
the team of people who bring the doers of it to justice.
Yeah.
Ice-T.
We're taking Ice-T to task on this episode about Rodgers and Hammerstein.
Damn right.
We're making that connection.
We're running all over town with it. So that finally brings us to, because I think we're in the same camp that we're Slytherin with this one.
Yeah.
Like we were like, is it a Gryffindor or a Hufflepuff for the first two? Then we were like Ravenclaw, Slytherin. Like now we're coming to The Sound of Music, which I would argue is probably the granddaddy of their like. It's like up there for sure.
If it's not their best musical, it's the best movie musical.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
So like hands down my favorite.
You just got like that spinning shot on her atop the hills, which are alive with The Sound of Music. You're done, like right out of the gate.
And also how they did Doe a Deer was like, it was like teaching music video editors how to edit music videos.
Oh, definitely.
When you watch that, it's like they did some really smart shit that film. I mean, as a film, when I enjoy Sound of Music, I really enjoy the movie.
Yeah,
I don't know why I do that, but like with all the other ones, I know the plays,
right?
And I know the play of Sound of Music, but I really like the movie is the play to me.
The movie version of the musical makes you feel like it's a lot bigger than just the Von Trapp family, like.
Because it is.
Well, exactly. And like when you're on stage, you don't get the grand scope of it. Like when they do Edelweiss at the end, like, and they're in that large stadium for it, like you can't convey that really well.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's like, great.
In the play, like, but this is, you're like, they're making like an insane escape, and that escape cannot be showed on stage very well, other than like they're gone, blackout, and then like them running across stage, and then like
that's like
more
literally
people
like I've seen that so many times whenever I see the show. There's nothing.
There's no other way for them to do it.
Like they sing "Climb Every Mountain" on stage, and they're next to like
stairs.
a paper mache stair mountain.
Yeah, God, but then if you show, if they're on a mountain, like they're in the Alps, you're like, there we go. So I mean, do we just
give it Gryffindor
like that? Are we just defaulting it to Gryffindor?
Oh no, it's definitely one of those.
That's the Jew in me doing it, like the full blown Jewish person in me going, you know what? I fucking love this story.
Yeah.
I love everything about this story.
Well, and
you're hiding people in the time where my people needed to be hid. You're,
it's
escaping.
And like also Gryffindor in the sense, like if you're putting it into the Harry Potter context.
oh yeah.
There are parallels to be seen on the surface. The A plot is like a personal drama. It's this drama about this family trying to like get their father to connect with them emotionally. And, dealing with death and grief and moving on from that while also having a greater responsibility to other people around you and expectations. So I feel like in that, like, it's very much in the Gryffindor sort of like, because Harry Potter, it was not always necessarily like, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like he didn't always seem like he wanted to be the person who has to save everyone.
No,
like,
there's a good period of time, particularly in book 5, where he's just like, I don't want this. Ugh, he's real whiny in that book. But yeah, I mean, there's a greater responsibility that like they are feeling, and then just like the sense of family that kind of carries it through, which could be argued for that very reason that it could go the Hufflepuff route, because Hufflepuff is very big on family and like preservation of culture. And if you want to also throw in like nature side to that, with the hills being alive, and that's like an embracing of art and culture, and they're trying to preserve that very thing, and there's songs in it, like the whole family is musical in that regard, you could lean Hufflepuff. But I do feel that Gryffindor, just based on the actions that the characters take, Maria's just like general sort of push for the whole family, and like how she's able to, I don't know, like reel them all in.
Well, do you think like Rudolph is a Hufflepuff story or a Gryffindor story?
What do you mean?
The Rudolph story. Do you think that's Hufflepuff or Gryffindor? I think it's the exact same story. Like as far as like beats go, They don't like her at the nunnery. She doesn't fit in. The reasons why she's good for the family are the reasons why she sticks out like a sore thumb at the nunnery. So that's I'm saying the emotional beats, right, for her. And then obviously the historical beats and what's going on with Georg von Trapp, not George, Georg, in the movie. They call him Georg. Just giggling about that for a second.
It's totally worth it.
Sorry to any Georgs who are listening.
Hold on, I gotta keep giggling about it. No, I forgot what my train of thought was, but yeah, I think it's similar to Rudolph. And so,
for that reason,
I think Gryffindor.
I was merely playing devil's advocate on this because it's just the game I play. But yeah,
Fisher Price's devil's advocate.
It's great. It comes with a lot of small pieces that are not like, you shouldn't keep it around a 3-year-old. Great. I think we all feel fairly good about where we landed. Are there any unspoken points of contention, subjects, things to touch on?
I will say this is probably one of the most like niche, dorky subjects that we will talk about. Like
we say that now, but we can't make that promise.
I really thought it'd be like Brad Pitt characters. Which Brad Pitt character? And so we're still dealing with like humans, but
yeah, no, we go
this
out
is very sort of amorphous.
Yeah, and that's some of the fun to it.
Yeah,
very fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And where are the many places that we can find you, Ari?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ari Stidham. I'm saying Stidham because that'll teach you how to spell it. Stidham, like the meat, but it is pronounced Stidham. So you don't need to learn that. I wouldn't be mad if you called me Stidham. I'm going to stop talking about it now. There is a website that will be launched within the next couple months where all of my music will be available for download. But for now, you can catch me at drtv.bandcamp.com and soundcloud.com/drtelevision.
Great.
Oh, and then Scorpion, Mondays at 10 p.m. on CBS.
You can maybe watch your TV show.
Yeah, check me out playing Sylvester. I mean, a publicist didn't book this because I love you so much. I'm here because I love you and this is such a cool idea.
I appreciate your love.
Would Sylvester Saw like pretty safely be a Ravenclaw, or what do you think?
I think Sylvester would pretty safely be a Hufflepuff.
Really? Also?
Yeah, I totally think he's like a sweetie pie. And
Yeah.
Totally would be.
He does have
squeaky
some of the
clean.
neurosis, though, of a Ravenclaw. I do feel.
Absolutely, very neurotic.
But again, there is an amorphous sort of lens to all of the houses.
And he would definitely be a Harry Potter fan. That's like the main thing that I know about Sylvester. He would definitely love.
Would he have a wand?
I think so. I think he'd have. I think there was probably a phase where he was really into it, but then he got a little bit too past it and was like, well, this was great, but the Wizard of Earthsea was really what Harry Potter was initially inspired by, so I'm starting to go over there with Wizard of Earthsea, and they have this thing called daemons, and I'm going to draw daemons now. It's like weird. I think you go really, really deep with it.
And if you want to see more of Sylvester not going that deep into that, but into large action sequences and saving the world time and time again, you can see him on Scorpion, CBS, Monday nights, 10 p.m.
Yeah, season 3.
Again, as always, I am Michael Barryte. I'm joined as always by Katie Reed. You can follow us at Michael Barryte on Twitter and that Katie Reed on Twitter.
Slide into his DMs, girls.
All right, you got to lay off of that one, Katie. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye bye, booey.
Bye bye, booey.
Bye bye, booey.